Okay, we're going to call the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors to order on November 2nd, 2010 at 9:07. Please conduct roll call, clerk.
Supervisor McCowan?
Here.
Supervisor Pinches?
Here.
Supervisor Smith?
Here.
Supervisor Colfax?
Here.
Chair Brown?
Here. Okay, Mr. Lee Howard, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we go any further, I just want to congratulate the San Francisco Giants. Go Giants!
Yeah.
Exciting! Yay! After 50 years, it was a pretty exciting series. Right on the end of your chair all the time. Okay, this is a time for public expression, and public expression is for items not on the agenda. I do not have speaker forms, but anyone that would like to speak, please come forward. Seeing no one, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, approval of the minutes. Supervisors?
I'll move approval of the minutes. Second.
It's been moved by Supervisor McCowan, seconded by Supervisor Colfax, to approve the minutes of October 19th and the 26th. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Unanimous vote. Now we're to agenda item number 4. It is our consent calendar. Clerk, have we established proper notice?
Yes, we have.
Thank you. Supervisor McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to pull item number 4 for discussion.
Okay, item number 4. Any other items, supervisors?
I'll make a motion to approve the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second.
We do have a motion, but we need to go to public comment. Anyone desiring to speak to the consent calendar, please come forward. Seeing no one, we do have a separate item for consideration. All those in favor of the motion to approve the rest of the items on the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Unanimous. Now we're to consent item number 4. Supervisor McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think actually the board may have accepted the job as complete, and this would be for the release of the contract surety. But I don't believe that the paving job was really done to specifications. I think we have an uneven surface out there. Water will pool. You can actually feel the surface variation when you drive over it. So I just thought it was worthy of a little discussion. And I notice the director is here, who no doubt will answer my concerns. We also have a member of the public here who I think would like to speak on the issue.
Okay. So first let us go to public comment. Mr. Howard, please restate your name for the record.
Good morning, Lee Howard, 3900 Parducci Road, and I will give you a handout. I realize that this is for release of retentions. I missed the acceptance of this job, and I recognize that is our fault, not yours. The reality is it is my opinion that this job was a terrible job from the day one. I give you today the requirements for the pavement specifications, what's allowed, and how it's dealt with. This job no way meets those standards. There's actually water puddled in the main line on the paving. There's puddles of water standing on this job. The last rain certainly indicated that. Those puddles will only exacerbate the situation down the road, not today, not tomorrow. It's going to be probably 2 or 3 years, but everywhere you have water standing in the main line, you're going to have beat out because they hydraulically beat the pavement. We've had this discussion with Howard to a degree, and he's indicated that he's aware of it. I'm curious to know what was done to make sure that the plans and specs were carried out and why they weren't carried out. To this day, as of this morning, out there standing on the job is one of the tripods that the contractor used for signs. Been there since last year, almost. It's still standing there. This job isn't even cleaned up. I don't chide the contractor. I chide the county and the inspection. There's responsibility here, and there should be responsibility, and somebody should be held responsible for this type of thing. Personally, at this point in time, it's probably just informational to you, but I've heard many people say that it is the job that's out there is unacceptable as far as the industry goes. Drive it and see. It is rough, and it gets rougher as it gets matted in and beat in. This job from the day one, way back when it was raining last year, there was an open ditch out there. Brought to attention, several days went by. One of you people went out, put a piece of plywood over it. I don't think that is taking care of the public and making sure the public's safe. I know that I've talked to several of you about this. I know also that it's hard to say technically, but maybe you need to say, we get somebody else in there and take a look and see just how bad out of spec it really is, if we can't get it from the people that are hired to take care of it for us and make sure we're safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Mr. DeShiel?
Good morning, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Howard DeShiel, Director of County Transportation. Lee Howard is correct that he has brought these to our attention as construction went on. I think there were things with the plywood that, weren't good. Much of that plywood was placed in areas that were right on the edge of the right-of-way and private properties for water services, so there was some debate as to which contractor was doing that. We did have metal put in there. We did work with the water company on that, but it was late and there were some days there that weren't good, so we learned some things on that. I'm not sure where the tripod is. I drive that road too. I haven't seen it, but I'll look for that if there's still one out there. The uneven pavement is mostly, the worst of it is on the approaches to the Ackerman Creek Bridge. And that section of the project was purposely left out because we had another project we were hoping to fund to widen Ackerman Creek Bridge as well. That project got delayed because of some match money, but it's going again now. It's proceeding. We had the contractor do a thin grind out and overlay just to smooth that up, but I would say the worst of the rough ride is in there. We did have a couple of the drainage inlets that had some temporary erosion control measures around them during the first rain that needed to get pulled and cleaned and fixed up. I haven't seen the bird baths that Lee Howard's referring to a great extent out there, but maybe I need to look again. But those are my responses, and I'll submit the questions.
Okay, Supervisor McCowan?
Having accepted the job, do we have any options now if we think that the job may not have been done to specifications?
Well, the compaction was tested by SHN, so that made spec. The area, especially on the Ackerman Creek Bridge approaches, doesn't meet the, Lee Howard measured this and pointed this out, doesn't meet the grade, the profile requirements for levelness. The contractor's response to that, when I spoke to him about it, was that, that had not been a full reconstruction on their part. They hadn't leveled underneath. And we basically overlaid that with the rubberized asphalt, which is something the department hasn't used before. Most asphalt can be planed. I guess the rubberized just gums up when you try to do that. It binds up. So we didn't really see where there was a corrective action there that we could take. Again, hopefully within 2 to 4 years, depending on funding, we'll completely redo that section anyway when we widen Ackerman Creek Bridge.
I'm wondering if, well, actually, I think there are areas more in the vicinity of Kunstler Ranch Road and to the south of there where the pavement is uneven, and so if there are other areas not next to the Ackerman Creek Bridge approaches where there's an issue, is that something that we could have recourse on?
Well, if we could show that the contractor did something that failed, that's the purpose of a bond, is for them to come in and repair it. At this point, with all the tests passing, the fact that it or alleged, Lee Howard saying that as it works in or time goes by, it settles or whatever, it's getting worse, the contractor could make a case that that was poor design, that the soils weren't properly tested, and that the engineer should have designed another section. We would end up in a point where we would have to prove that it wasn't a design problem, that it was a contractor problem. They, I'm sure, would go back to the test results that were done during construction and say, we built what you designed. So ultimately, the contractor would say it's the engineer's fault. That would be our responsibility.
Well, the proof is in the pudding, though, and what Mr. Howard has given us is some fairly detailed specifications right out of the book, and it refers to laying a straight edge and then measuring the surface variation. And when concerns were raised about earlier stages of the paving, about how rough and uneven things were, it was explained to us that, well, the final course is going to level everything up. And ultimately, it seems the contractor's responsible for meeting specifications. Not to prolong this further, but I wonder if there's any value in referring this back to the department so that they can go out and check the areas in question to this standard and at least report back whether they believe these specifications have been met or not.
I would be in favor of that.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Okay, we do have a motion by Supervisor McCowan and a second by Supervisor McCowan. Clerk, did you get the motion?
Colfax.
First-
Colfax. What did I say?
Madam,
Oh, again.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Supervisor Pinches.
first of all, the action at which the motion was taken, that's not on our agenda. The action is to approve the surety agreement or not. And I think it makes no sense to delay this surety agreement. By direction of the chair, you can have the Director of Transportation report back. But I think there's a real problem with moving forward because this is not a part of our agenda item, what the motion was.
Supervisor Smith.
Madam Chair, I think it would be the prerogative of the department to review this, but I don't think it would require a motion. I think we could just remove it from consent today, refer it back to the department for further review, and to return to the board with an update. And
Well, the alternative motion is to not approve release of the contract surety. That's the alternative motion.
well, I wanted to ask the director: is there any problem with delaying this for a week?
No.
To review it?
No.
So I think it would just be pulled from the agenda. You review it and address the concerns here today from Mr. Howard and the details that we received from the 2006 standard specs, and then just report back if we need to
Sure.
do any other follow-up or your opinion about it.
And the department will stipulate, because we've checked the area on the approaches to Ackerman Creek Bridge, we know we're out of spec, and we've accepted that that'll just be corrected at a future date. That was a change or was in the original design. I guess I need to go off Mr. Howard and see if there's something back that's not within 400 feet of the bridge approach. You're saying there is. Okay, we'll go look at it.
Okay, County Council?
Yeah, Madam Chair, what I would recommend is that you continue this for 1 week and allow the department to go out and take a look at the issue. And it may be that this would come back under a closed session litigation item and not be a public discussion.
Well, there's no reason it couldn't be done by a motion, but I'm also happy to withdraw the motion and have it done by direction of the chair.
Okay. So the motion is withdrawn. Supervisor Colfax, agree? Okay, so through direction of the chair, we will continue this item and have it back on our agenda in some form next week.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. Thank you, everyone, and we're going to move on to agenda item number 5A, Chief Executive Officer's Report.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. I'd like to point out that this morning we have a volunteer in our volunteer kiosk. We have someone out there who is actually helping collect ballots, and so we should have a volunteer for about 6 to 7 hours today. So there is a lot of traffic on Election Day into, of course, the Elections Office and then also into the Executive Office. So we're hoping that this will reduce that foot traffic, and we're pleased that we're able to find some volunteers. It's been a long process trying to get some people out there, but we're hopeful that that will assist us.
Thank you so much, and I walked in to go in to place a ballot for my mother, and absentee ballot, and was greeted by the gentleman, and he said, "I can do that for you," and it was simple and quick, and I appreciated it very much.
Well, thank you for that comment. We're hoping to improve customer service in the administration center, and this is one of our ideas that we think will work. Okay, so we know next week, November 9th, we will have a heavy schedule for our board meeting, and we'll be having the mental health presentation and also our first quarter fund balance, and the Williamson Act as well. Today, while it does appear that we have a light agenda, we do have a very lengthy closed session today. So it seemed that we would go ahead and have the meeting with our lighter open session agenda, as closed session should take a few hours. Let's see. Last week, I had mentioned to this board that we were working with Sheriff Allman and Norm Thurston in the executive office looking at a review of the Sheriff's Department. I believe by the end of the board meeting, we all received copies from the executive office of the Harvey Rose review. That review was done in 1995 for a Sheriff's Department quite some time ago. However, the executive office is looking at those recommendations, and we will be talking with the sheriff to determine if any of those recommendations were implemented by the Sheriff's Department at that time, and if any of them are still relevant today in 2010. And I will be reporting back to the board on that. And for today, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Angelo. We'll go on to agenda item number 5B. Do we have anything on our legislative platform?
No ledge report today.
Mr. DeShiel is outside. We have the Department of Transportation Director's Report. Anyone has comments, discussion? Was hoping Mr. DeShiel would be here. Supervisor.
We could get him.
Or
Okay,
skip over it.
Pardon?
Yeah, rescue him or skip over it.
Rescue him is the word.
Now at home, they'll wonder what that meant.
Mr. DeShiel, I asked that you came in, to come back in, mainly because I want to thank you and your department. I received a letter from the Mendocino County Office of Education indicating that Mr. Paul Tyner went beyond the call of duty to help them with the transportation of a temporary building, and they had the wrong permits. They were able to change that, or it would have cost the County Office of Education a lot of money. And the mover, I guess, was men on the freeway. The permit was issued over the counter, and I just felt it was important to recognize your department and Mr. Tyner upon receipt of this letter.
Thank you.
Having said that, I hope that we can do this for anyone, citizens, businesses, et cetera, in the county, because none of us need to lose several $1,000s for the movement of large equipment, large homes. So I really wanted to thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
that's been passed on to the employees, so.
Okay. I think that's it for Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to direct the board's attention to the first page of the director's report. I think that the director did a very good job talking about the stakeholder process on the Usall Road. This has been really generated by quite a bit of effort of local community members, those in particular that have property adjoining the Usall Road. These are private property owners in addition to state parks. So I think this has been a very good process to date. We've succeeded in receiving some outside resources to deal with some of the sediment issues on Usall, and the process continues. And I think the director did a good overview here, so board members have an idea of what's taking place there. And the next meeting will be December 16th.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Pinches.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to mention this under supervisor reports, but this is probably a more appropriate time. Even though it was previously reported, it really took the budget of the state to really make this, cast this in stone. But coming from our MCOG meeting yesterday, I'd like to announce that $3.7 million for right-of-way on the east side Potter Valley Road was approved, allocated. $459,000 for the Brick Trail Second Access Road was allocated, and there were some rail crossings in Willis allocated. And of course, there was about 11 vehicles in the MTA, Mendocino Transit Authority, which was allocated. But I think that's extremely good news as far as the east side Potter Valley Road and also the second Brook Trails access. And Howard, I guess these two projects now can move forward. I mean, the funding is there, so are you prepared to, I mean, it's always has been kind of the money's been held up, but it looks like actually we weren't even thinking that we were going to get the money for the Brook Trails second access, but it come through.
Right.
And that's a lot of money for the right away for the east side Potter Valley Road too, but the money's been allocated, so
Correct.
I guess the ball's in your court now.
That's correct. All the projects were updated in one of the, I think it was after you came back from the July recess, I forget which date, that director's report, and there was a big footnote under East Side Potter Valley Road and Brook Trails that was contingent on passage of the state budget. So with the passage of the state budget, those, CTC actions came around. I want to emphasize, though, Brook Trail's second access, it's simply the preliminary engineering environmental phase, and the nearly, $500,000 will probably go towards the environmental document we'll need for that project. I say go towards it, depending on how big of an environmental document we need, we'll see how far that goes. So we'll be looking for consultant there. East Side Potter Valley Road, that is the right-of-way phase, which is not just acquisition of right-of-way. There's roughly 6 acres has to be acquired. It won't cost that much money. But that phase also includes the engineering and utility relocation process, which right now we're actually in a bit of a discussion with PG&E over, actually County Counsel's office and the department. So my hope is that what's very clear to me in the Streets and Highway Code, which is it's the responsibility of the utilities to move their facilities at their expense will prevail, and a good amount of that money will be reprogrammed to construction. You know, that's our hope. But yes, we've been moving ahead. This board had approved on Eastside Parkway Road, I can't remember the exact number, I think it was around $140,000 of 1B funds roughly a year and a half ago for right-of-way engineering, and that has been proceeding so that we've got a lot of that engineering work done, and we'll hit the ground running with this utility and right-of-way acquisition process.
Thank you. Supervisor McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back to the Usall Road, from the report, it appears a lot of the damage is done by recreational four-wheel drive clubs in the winter. What are the possibilities of a winter closure? I think it was tried before. It didn't get support. Could that be done? And then perhaps, because I think most of the permanent residents on that road, if not all, take their primary access from Four Corners to the north?
That's correct. In fact, if you look at the very last paragraph of my last item of the director's report, it's, you know, talking about the fact that we're notifying emergency agencies about the normal seasonal closure on 4 of the county roads, 10 Mile, Navarro Ridge, Fort Bragg, Sherwood Road, that by resolution of this board take place December 1st every year. That process was put in place in 2002, and Usall Road was removed because there was public protest, and basically the environmental document we processed for those roads failed for Usall. So as I indicate there in the last paragraph, we're going to go ahead, and staff has the time, and give that another try for Usall Road. We might even think about another road we want to include. I debated that in my mind, but at least for Usall Road.
Thank you.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Supervisor McCowan's comments, this has certainly been a topic, one of the topics for discussion at this series of meetings that we've had. And it was the feeling of those involved that we needed to have more information, more of a process, so there would be more stakeholder buy-in to this concept. Also, I believe the director or one of your staff reported to us that there's certainly, even if there was the interest in going forward today, there wasn't the time for a seasonal closure this year. You have to conduct a public hearing. We didn't have the time to do the due diligence, and quite frankly, I think we still need to do a fair amount of work with those involved to make sure that the majority of people, especially those that have the regulatory function and possibly the funding sources to be on board, so you would have what you would need to bring that forward in a positive manner.
Right.
So-
We basically need to prepare another CEQA document
Right.
like we did in 2002, and
So
that's
that
going
would-
to take some time.
So there would be this coming year, so if it's going to be for consideration, it would be for the next season.
Correct.
And that's absolutely something that a number of individuals have raised, especially if dollars are going to be put into that road. It's a costly venture to just do the minimal upkeep things, and if we're able to draw down some funds, it might be that that would be an incentive to have a closure consistent with expenditures on the road. It seems to make a lot of sense for those involved thus far, but we need more of a process before that comes forward.
Supervisor Pinches.
Well, I have a different view of this. First of all, the Usall Road is a road that not one resident needs to get to their house at. And with all the work and these bigger projects coming up with their Department of Transportation, I would hate to think that we're going to use our limited time and resources to start doing an EIR on a road that's never has been upgraded. I mean, it's always been just basically a fair weather road or summer road. So I think I would not like to see our Department of Transportation spend a whole lot of time and energy on doing environmental documents and on everything, and it doesn't even serve one person.
Right. Supervisor Pinches, if I may, through the chair, this would be a negative declaration that we would prepare with our own staff like we did in 2002. Part of the reason we dropped the Usall Road is when there was no public complaint on the other 3 roads. Because there was a challenge at Usall, we were looking down the possibility of a higher environmental document that would be costly, the board just dropped it at that point. My thought is we try again with a staff-prepared, simple negative declaration and see how it goes this time. It's, almost, 8 years later. We'll see.
And I'd like to note also in your report that we had 2 crew members from the Fort Bragg maintenance out on the job with 6 inches of rain dealing on the use of the road.
Right.
That's right.
So again, thank your staff.
Yes.
Supervisor McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the conversation seems to indicate that the problem wasn't that the environmental document was sufficient, but there was a lack of political will at the board. And I know that the Usall Road is been posted for decades, road not maintained during winter. We don't maintain it during winter because we can't afford to, but by not closing it, then it gets torn up. We come back in, the money we didn't spend in the winter to maintain it, we have to spend in the spring or summer to repair it, or suffer the added environmental damage. So I would hope that the director and the district supervisor might work together on the timeline, and although we may not be able to close it at the start of the winter closure season, we might still be able to have the closure kick in sometime during the winter to prevent further damage. Just a suggestion for the 2 of you to consider.
Well, again, I would take you back to the priorities lists I brought at the budget hearings August, whatever it was, 31st. All staff is committed to getting your projects, all your projects on that list moving forward. It would mean taking our environmental coordinator and directing them to work on USAW right now. A good example, probably the next thing I'll have him work on is the RFP for the PE phase of Brook Trail Second Access. You folks need to realize that whenever we pull off to work on something immediately, something else waits. So if you want to direct me to do that right now, I will. But I would rather look for the beginning of the season next year. Give me a year to fit it in.
Well, again, it was just a suggestion to work with the district supervisor. I don't see what work is involved in dusting off the previous document and updating it, but again, I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much, Howard.
Okay.
This is department matters and reports. Headline, Friday, October 22nd in Ukiah Daily Journal. Since Ms. Cryer is here, the headline reads, Local Food Stamp Program Honored for its Outreach to Community. And I want to recognize the work here. Mendocino County's Food Stamp Program got its first gold award for effective outreach this year from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It was only one of 2 local governmental programs in the nation to receive the top award. So congratulations, and I wanted to make sure it was made for the record. Good job. Okay, we're moving on to agenda items number 7A, B, and C. Supervisors' reports, ad hoc committees, standing committee reports. Anyone? Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Received an email from one of our MLPA coordinators and wanted to make sure this was part of the record, and other supervisors you may have also received this. Due in a large part to the tremendous show of solidarity by 18 city and government agencies and several dozen civic, fishing, and environmental organizations passing resolutions supporting the regional stakeholders group Unified MPA Array proposal, a historical first has been achieved for the North Coast region. The Blue Ribbon Task Force voted unanimously to forward this proposal to the Department of Fish and Game for the February 2nd meeting for approval. So this is something that, of course, we supported because of the interest of our stakeholders locally giving us that feedback. So I think it's important to mention this because this is a first in terms of the contentious ways that the process went forward in the southern part of the state, I think individuals felt that they were really paying attention to that and learned from that process, and that's why they wanted to have the unified approach. And they are very, very thrilled that the Blue Ribbon Task Force accepted unanimously the community-based proposal. So I think that's a real plus for our region, and of course that's Mendocino County north to the Oregon border. Wanted to announce that the Mendocino Coast Clinics Incorporated received a $2.5 million grant to expand its South Street facility. This is part of the ARA funding, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, federal funds. This will allow the Mendocino Coast Clinics to build a 10,000 square foot addition needed to the South Street facility, which opened in September of 2003. This will allow more counseling rooms, dental operations, medical exam rooms, administrative offices, a kitchen suitable for disaster use, a conference room, and a central supply area. The community will have to raise as a match $200,000 to match that proposal, but that is really a plus and a credit to them for their application on that and their receipt of those funds. Also received a copy from the California Center for Rural Policy at Humboldt State University. This is a research document, but I think it's a really interesting and useful information for our county. They studied a four-county area, Del Norte, Humboldt, Trinity, and Mendocino, and this is on community health indicators as measurements or a barometer for underlying community health concerns. And this report is the result of a community-based process involving numerous individuals and organizations. And you may receive, the public may receive a copy of this report by calling 826-3400, or you may also obtain the report online at www.humboldt.edu.
Okay, thank you. I do have a report. The AAA met, that's the Area Agency on Aging. It was our annual meeting, joint meeting with the Advisory Council and contractors. I want to note that Mendocino County has 13,250 seniors within the county, 15.4 of the population, and 9.4 are living below poverty level. The meeting featured a number of examples of how the senior centers working with the agencies and certainly AAA provide help to seniors and also are watchdogs. And they gave several examples. One was from Fort Bragg, in fact, a woman that was having problem with mold, and they went in and were able to help. Private individuals within the community also assisted. And then another had to do with DMV, that many of our elders do have problems maintaining their licenses or whether they should have that license or not. And I was really surprised to learn that DMV has a special helpline for seniors. So I felt that was really interesting. I've really enjoyed my time on this particular board and learned a lot through going this last year. I will have the Eel Russian River Commission meeting coming up on Thursday morning. It will be in Sonoma County at their Board of Supervisors chambers. Ms. Lawler will be there as the secretary. And I do have an agenda if anyone would like to look at it, and I do believe it'll be the last meeting for Supervisor Paul Kelly since he is retiring from office. Also, I want to remind everyone that we're reaching the end of the year. I think we're down to 4 meetings. Is that correct? 4 meetings that we have left, you know? Okay. And so ad hocs, we're going to have to take a look at the ad hocs, and of course standing committee business needs to be concluded by the end of the year, especially with the new appointments, or they will go to ad hocs. Now, having said that, November 8th, this coming Monday, we need to assess if, for the committee chairs of the standing committees, if we need to have meetings. So, does anyone have input? Doesn't sound like it. Ms. Angelo, I'll leave that to you to work on that so we have everything ready for our agenda summary meeting tomorrow, too. Okay. Now we'll move along. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I forgot one item to follow up on Supervisor Pinch's reports yesterday from the MCOG meeting. We went over the progress to some degree on the Vision Mendocino project. This, of course, is the blueprinting countywide process that's underway to try to come up with a regional planning process. And I attended the Fort Bragg meeting, which was well attended by over 25 residents in Fort Bragg, to give input on their ideas in terms of traffic flow and how development would take place. And it was a charrette kind of format. It was well attended, and it was a good process. There are still 2 meetings left. I believe it's this Saturday. There will be the Willits meeting and the Ukiah meeting on a Saturday. The others in the other areas of the county have concluded, but I think it's a good process, and I think it's good that MCOG undertook this. It's not required in rural areas, it's required in urban areas, but MCOG received the funding, and so we are creating the blueprinting. And Lake County, I believe, is a few steps ahead of us. So obviously, being neighbors with Lake, there'll be some kind of continuity with their process. So I just wanted to report in on that.
Thank you, and I forgot to hand these out. I think each supervisor should have one in case you receive constituent calls, and it's senior information and assistance that I talked about earlier, program of AAA. So I want to hand out these brochures so you have them. Okay, Supervisor McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I attended a recognition program for juvenile probationers who had successfully completed the Youth Impact Program through our probation department. And the program consists of a couple of probation officers working intensively with juvenile probationers. They get up in the middle of the night pretty much so that they can perform an exercise program before school starts, and then they also have instruction on basic principles like personal responsibility and honesty. And so I think I'd like to acknowledge probation officers Jack Wan and George Leone, who work with these young men. And it was a pretty inspiring ceremony, and it's intended to be a life-changing program so that instead of getting caught up into the cycle of offend and get caught and offend and get caught, it's intended to really give these young men an opportunity to think about what they're doing and think about it before they do it and what the consequences might be. And the hope is next year to also expand the program to young women. Also, LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, will be having a meeting tomorrow of an ad hoc committee to consider updated determinations for brook trails. And the issue wasn't with the content of the determinations, but the format in which they were being presented. And then I expect LAFCO will take final action on December 6th to approve the Brook Trails Municipal Service Review. Also, there have been a series of meetings regarding the permit from the Sheriff's Office for an exemption to grow more than 25 marijuana plants per parcel. The meetings have been attended by applicants who are involved in the program, of whom there have been about 15 total this year. The third-party inspectors who have been selected by the sheriff and who are working with the applicants to make sure they're in compliance with the program. Sergeant Randy Johnson, who is in charge of the program for the Sheriff's Office, and myself. And the focus of the meetings is to identify what are those areas where the ordinance could actually be improved. And everyone is actively soliciting the input of the applicants as well as the third-party inspectors. And it's likely that at some point, perhaps in December or January, 931 will be back in front of us for some amendments to incorporate some of the ideas that are identified through these meetings where the program could be improved. In other areas, it will be the sheriff's discretion to work with the third-party inspectors and the applicants to institute certain changes that are consistent with the overall intent of the ordinance. But the good news is the program does seem to be a success. The sheriff reported earlier that he's taken in over $100,000 this calendar year for sale of zip ties and for permit fees from the applicants to this program. So we seem to be getting past some of the polarization that has characterized this issue in the past. Also, I'd just like to note that we have a new restaurant in Ukiah, Branch's Restaurant on Airport Park Boulevard. Their grand opening was very successful, a completely packed house, and I think they're probably open for business to the general public now, or soon will be.
Yeah. Supervisor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more item I forgot, which is the Joint Coordinating Committee for the Casper, operation of the Casper Transfer Station has not met. We had 2 meetings scheduled that were canceled by the city because of just not having the information ready for any kind of substantive discussion. So the city is actively pursuing various options, and they will be taking the options, I believe, to the council next Monday night. So I think that the committee will probably be meeting, the joint committee will be meeting probably at the end of November to discuss options that might be coming forward from the city if the city makes any kind of decision. Again, it needs to be reviewed by the joint committee and then brought back to this body. So we still have a few steps, but they are looking at data and doing a real full-on study of what would be the best operational model for Casper, and the 2 meetings needed to be canceled because they weren't ready to proceed. So just wanted to update the board on that.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Pinchas?
I just wanted to announce that today I'm up for my 4-year performance evaluation.
How's it going?
Well, there's been some scathing reports out there.
Oh, Supervisor, you're too funny.
And is this the form people would use?
Okay. Moving forward, I did have something to say, but Supervisor Pinchas, you made me forget. So let's move on to agenda item number 7D, discussion and possible action regarding acceptance of the General Governments Committee's report and recommendation regarding Board of Supervisors representation on the Mendocino County Policy Council on Children and Youth. So this will go to the General Government Committee. I would like to report, that means you, Supervisor McCowan, but I would like to report I did attend their meeting last week, and I have all kinds of information about it, and it was a very good meeting. So go forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, very simply, it's a statutory requirement that the board appoint a representative to the Policy Council on Children and Youth, and so the General Government Committee is making that recommendation.
Supervisors, comment?
And the only question would be, given there's 2 months left in the year, is there much point to appointing someone now, or should it simply go back on the list of appointments for January?
Well, I would like to address that. First, I'd like to go to public comment. Anyone that would like to speak on this item, please come forward. Seeing no one, it is back to the board. As I recall it, it was a chair assignment. And for whatever reason, it was taken off the chair's assignments for the year. It is listed today as a general assignment of this board, which is fine. However, you want to put, have the appointment go forward each year. I did point this out because I was contacted for non-attendance, which was pretty embarrassing to me. I had no idea. And then ferreting out the information and understanding that it's called for in the code, that they do have a supervisor on. I was very happy for the General Government Committee to take it on and come back. The importance, Supervisor McCowan, of appointing somebody, there is a meeting, one meeting left for the year, and there's some pretty critical issues given the fact of the state budget and the amounts of money that they receive to provide services. And there are other issues. I thought I'd written down the next date of the meeting, but I also have the 2011 calendar. But the meeting will take place in December, so I think it is important that we do appoint someone from this board to represent our interests on that particular council.
So, Madam Chair, what would be your preference? How would you like to proceed?
Well, I think it should go back under chair assignment. And if you agree with me, I'd like to hear the motion, and I'd be willing to attend that meeting in December.
And be appointed.
To be appointed today and attend in
So
official
do we
capacity.
need a motion for that, Counselor? Can we
Yeah,
just?
it's on your appointments to boards and commissions. So you can
It's on the
take
list,
action today.
so we can just take action. We don't need to put it back on the agenda. Well, then I'll make a motion that we appoint Supervisor Brown to the
PCCY.
Policy Council on Children and Youth.
Second.
Third.
Third. It's been moved by Supervisor Smith, seconded by Supervisor Pinches, that we appoint the chair to represent the board on PYYC.
PCCY.
PCCY. Sorry about that. Clerk, did you get it right? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you very much. I'm very willing to serve.
Good.
Next, we go on to...
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7E, discussion and possible appointment of board member, representative, and alternate representative to the California State Association of Counties, and that's CSAC Board of Directors for 2011. This is a yearly appointment by this board. I have served this for 2 years now on the Board of Directors. I'm not sure if any of you, I know Supervisor Colfax probably is not interested in the appointment for the coming year. But anyway, I have enjoyed my time on that board. I have found it very interesting. And if someone else would like to stand up and take that position, that, I believe in sharing and giving everyone the opportunity. If no one else is willing to do so, I'm very honored to serve. Supervisor McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think this is one of the appointments where continuity actually confers greater influence and ability to be effective. So I would move that we maintain the same representation. So Supervisor Brown to be the representative and Supervisor Smith to be the alternate.
Second.
Okay, we do have a motion by Supervisor McCowan to appoint Supervisor Brown as the representative on the CSAC Board of Directors and Supervisor Smith to be the alternate. And it was seconded by Supervisor Colfax. We'll go to public comment. Anyone desiring to speak on this item, please come forward. Seeing no one, it's back to the board. We'll entertain the motion. Unless there's further comment from the board members? None? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you very much for your confidence in me and Supervisor Smith in serving your interests at that level. Okay, we'll go on to agenda item number 10, appointments to boards and commissions. We do have a master list in front of us.
I'll move the slate of appointments in front of us.
So that would be for Child Care Planning Council.
The whole slate.
The whole
slate.
I was going
Yeah.
to list them for the record. And Community Development Commission, 2nd District. By the way, is that Reverend Chris Warner Carey?
I believe it is.
I'm going to have
Yes.
Janine clarify that.
And then the Mendocino
Yeah.
Resource Conservation District. And then we also have Retirement Board, a 4th member.
Dr.
Now-
Kersey.
Yeah, it's Dr. Kersey. I was thinking 4th District, but it says 4th member. So,
And actually, I would like a little clarification on that appointment. Is this one that is solely at the discretion of the board, or is this one of the ones where,
No, this one is solely at the discretion of the board. And Dr. Corsi has served on the retirement board for some time, and this is just a reappointment.
well, I would defer to Supervisor Smith, but maybe it would be appropriate to at least have an interview.
I'll second. Are we going, did we get a second
The
on the
motion
slate?
is for the whole slate.
No, I understand that. Do we have
yes,
a second yet?
Supervisor Colfax seconded the motion.
Okay, so could I address Supervisor McCowan's?
Yes, you may,
Okay.
and I also have comment.
Okay, so I asked counsel, and maybe she could give a little bit more of an explanation and overview, because of the confusion, I think it was 2 weeks ago, with the outdated information that Supervisor Pinches received, the specifics regarding members and their positions was inaccurate. So this has received scrutiny at the executive level as well as council. So maybe there were 3 positions that were up. You made a determination about one of them, and then we have in front of us Dr. Donald Kersey, who is asking for reappointment. The 6th member slot is a resignation, and that one would be currently open. So just because of the confusion 2 weeks ago, I thought it would be good for council to give a little bit of an overview on those positions. So we'll have more information.
And actually, before county council starts, I thought that Supervisor Pinches requested a whole explanation coming back, and that it would be an agenda item to discuss. And so I don't know, Supervisor Pinches.
Well, I just want to know the current status of the retirement board.
Well, that's what Janine,
Yeah.
council's
Okay.
prepared to give that.
Under the code, there are 9 retirement board members, 4 of which are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. The terms, and you can also appoint a member of the Board of Supervisors to sit on the retirement board, and you've done that in the past as well. The term of a retirement board member is 3 years, and that includes the term that the County Board of Supervisor would sit as well. So right now you have 2 vacancies. Well, you have a reappointment before you, Donald Corsi, and you have a resignation of a particular board member that needs to be filled once we have some applications. She can sit, under the government code, under 1302, she can stay in the position until it's filled, even though her term has expired. But she's actually resigning, and I think she's agreed to stay on until we fill it. But there's nothing that guarantees that she will stay on until we fill it. With respect to the member of the Board of Supervisors that sits on the retirement board, there's been a little bit of confusion because I think your practice has been to assign or appoint that board member every year in January when you make your assignments to boards and commissions. But actually, when you do appoint that board member, it's really a 3-year term, so you don't need to keep doing that every year. Obviously, if a member of the Board of Supervisors sitting on the retirement board leaves office, then they're no longer, they cannot stay on the retirement board, and you would have to reappoint. So that's the current status. You've got Supervisor Smith on the retirement board, and you appointed her in January of this year, and technically that's a 3-year term. You have Dr. Corsi, who's up for a reappointment, and then you have a vacancy. Historically, you have not, at least during my time, you haven't interviewed these folks. You only just started doing that, I believe, last time, the last appointment that you made. So it's really up to this board if you want to establish a policy where you interview respective candidates and reappointees. That's certainly up to you as to how you want to handle it. But Dr. Corsi has applied for reappointment, and you can make that appointment today if you so choose.
Okay, I have some questions. And I guess the first one that comes right out is why the confusion? And it's the same with the Policy Council on Children and Youth. I mean, it's every time I turn around, I am a new supervisor. And now I'm being told that, for instance, the board representative is not a 1-year appointment, it's a 3-year appointment. And we just reappointed last January. So I guess I have a lot of confusion, and I want more information to come back. I want it on an agenda because, for instance, if it is a 3-year appointment, and nothing against Supervisor Smith, how many years have you sat in that seat? And if we knew it was a 3-year appointment, maybe there would have been more consideration last January. So I really thank Supervisor Pinches for bringing this forth. And I guess my second question is, how do we advertise these appointments? How is it noticed? Was it in the paper? If so, when did it appear? And I'm just at the point where I'm not going to vote for this motion because I do want to interview. There's a lot of controversy within the community and uncertainty with retired employees, and I think it needs a higher level of discussion and scrutiny. Supervisor McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I don't necessarily disagree with the idea that it may be premature to go forward with the retirement board appointment. We did have an interview process for the last appointment. I think that was appropriate, particularly given the heightened concern and scrutiny to all issues related to the retirement board and the retirement system. And the appointments to the retirement board is one of the few powers that this board actually has in relation to the retirement board. So with the consent of the maker of the second, I would withdraw the retirement board appointment from the motion.
Okay. And I would like to say that I highly respect Dr. Donald Kersey. This has nothing to do with his appointment precisely. I just want more information, and part of the information I'd like to see coming back is the number of years that our present representative as a supervisor has served now in her second term of office, because I'm confused. Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Clerk, will you reread the motion?
Upon motion by Supervisor McCowan and seconded by Supervisor Colfax, it is ordered that the Board of Supervisors approve the following appointments with the exception of the Retirement Board appointment of Dr. Donald Kersey.
And I apologize, supervisors, you do have comment. Supervisor Pinches.
Let's go ahead and vote on them. I got a comment on when the retirement board comes.
Okay. Did you want to comment before the motion?
No, I can comment.
Okay.
To the motion, I would prefer that it just say with the exception of the retirement board appointment, period.
And the second agrees? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. Unanimous decision. Supervisor Pinches.
Well, in speaking on the retirement board appointment, this appointee's been on the retirement board for a long term. I don't oppose the appointment, but I just think, with the retirement board being the spotlight, there's been a lot of articles and a lot of pension obligation is a big issue out there, not only in this county, but throughout the state, throughout the nation. But I'd like to see a little more active process and maybe advertising. I don't really, and maybe this is one of the points with the consolidation of the clerk of the board and the CEO's office. I think there's been a little bit of confusion there, but especially on this appointment, I like to see a little more ability to get out there and advertise countywide and see who the applicants did come forward before we move forward with any new appointments. Because this is, as Supervisor McCowan stated, this is the board's opportunity to weigh in on what goes on at the retirement system.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it would be good for council to go over the other positions, because what we got was just a brief review of the ones appointed by the Board of Supervisors, and I think it's unfortunate. I think the list that Supervisor Pinches got was clearly outdated and did have some errors, but I don't think, I think in general, the record keeping in terms of the appointments has been a good one, and we have appointed people appropriately at the intervals that they needed to be appointed. But I think it's important for council to go over the other positions on this, because there is confusion. I think a number of individuals that I've spoken with in the public don't really understand the full component of that. So I think it would be important to mention the other positions, how they're appointed and what that process is, and that's been consistently followed. It hasn't, I don't think there have been any omissions or errors with respect to how those other positions have been appointed, nor this. But, so I'd like you to just go over that, and I concur. I was the one that really pushed having an interview process prior to this, and working with our interim CEO, Al Beltrami, to set up what the protocols would be, looking at other counties. And that's when we got the protocols put in place, and we did act on that at the last vacancy. So I think we would be consistent in terms of doing that going forward. So I think that that's fine. And Donald Kersey is currently a seated member and would like to be reappointed. And I think that, he can be included in on that process as well. I think that that's fine, because that is a process we put in place. As council said, you don't need to adhere to that, but I think if we set that as a standard, I think we should continue with that. But please delineate the other positions, just so it's clear what all the number of positions and how those are all filled. I think that would be useful.
Okay.
Madam Chair, rather than do that, why don't we make it an agenda item, and we can have the information in front of us and then have some discussion of it, and I think that'd be good background for then moving on to the interview of whoever our appointee will be.
That's fine. I was going to suggest that, I did do a lengthy opinion for the Board of Supervisors some time ago on the excess earning issue, and I included all of this information as well in that opinion. I can pull that back out and readjust it. And also, I think it would be important for you to hear from the clerk of the board regarding the publication process, because we do advertise for these positions. But certainly, let's put it on the agenda for next week, and I can do a quick report.
Next week for the 9th is very, very full.
Or the 30th.
We're almost an hour, at least 45 minutes beyond our timed item for closed session, so we do need to get going. But I would like to see it come back on November 30th. Okay. And so that gives adequate time for the public as well.
And I'll put something in writing for you as well.
And that's the second time we've made that direction. We made that same direction last week.
I realize that, Supervisor Pinches. Supervisor McCowan.
And if we're going to have that big of a delay, then I wonder if the position should be republicized and perhaps even a press release sent out.
I think, Ms. Angelo?
Madam Chair, we certainly can do that. If you would like a press release announcing the position, we can do that, if this board directs it.
Okay,
And-
that was a suggestion by Supervisor McCowan. I see no one opposing that. So we will schedule it for November 30th and go forward from there. Okay. That is it. We are now going to go into closed session. At the end of our closed session, we will be reporting out. There is one more comment I just wanted to make. Supervisor Pinches, it's an afterthought, I saw my note. I don't think it's the consolidation of the COB, CEO offices. This has been confusion, obviously, for quite some time on the retirement board. I'm just saying,
Yes.
I was going to respond to John, I didn't see
Yeah.
my note.
It's not confusion.
Well, it is, Supervisor Smith, when you consider we do a yearly appointment of a supervisor, and every year we do it, it's a three-year commitment. I'm just learning that.
I
So-
just learned that.
Yeah.
Council just learned that by looking into the specifics of it, but the list Supervisor Pinches received was
I
not an
realize
accurate
that.
list.
I
So-
realize that.
But the record keeping and the specifics of it coming forward in a timely manner to the board has always happened.
Yeah. Madam Chair, if I may, I did speak with the Executive Office and Clerk of the Board staff, and we are working on updating that list, and we will be contacting the Retirement Board to assure that the information we have is accurate. So we will have an updated list for you. We were planning on January 1, unless you would like that list updated sooner than that. We'll see what we can do for November 30th for the Retirement Board presentation.
Okay, but it also has to be reported from the retirement board.
Right,
When other vacancies are taken up that
That's right.
the Board of Supervisors has no power of appointment
That's-
over.
right.
So-
Historically, there's a question as to who is the keeper of the list.
Of the list.
Right,
Correct.
Well, I just want the right list to be out there.
yeah. We'll have an accurate list.
Okay.
If a supervisor's confused, I'm sure the public is probably confused too.
Okay, we will be going into closed session. There will be a 5-minute delay. We won't be going right in, so everybody can have a short break. We're reconvening out of closed session at 2:03. County Council, please
Yes,
report.
I have one thing to report on the litigation matter. The board has authorized the initiation of litigation. Further information regarding the litigation will be provided upon request once the litigation has been filed. The motion to initiate was moved by Supervisor Smith, seconded by Supervisor Colfax. It was a unanimous decision with Supervisor McCowan being absent.
Okay. So, we're going to be adjourning the meeting at this time, and we're at 2:04. We're correct? 2:03? Oh, was I 1 minute? I thought maybe a whole second. We're adjourned. Thank you.